In March 1938, many Jewish refugees escaped persecution from Germany and arrived at Otopolu in Soviet territory bordering Manchuria. Major General Kiichiro Higuchi and the chairman of the Manchurian Railway, Yosuke Matsuoka, made an individual decision to arrange special trains for them. On the ground, Captain Norihiro Yasue and Navy Captain Koreshige Inusuka worked to save 10,000 refugees. Thus, these two people were honored to be inscribed in the prestigious Jewish Golden Book. The Germans fiercely protested this act by Major General Kiichiro Higuchi to save Jewish refugees. Afterwards, upon becoming Prime Minister, Hideki Tojo, General of the Kanto Army, said it was an act of mercy for human beings. In December 1938, 5 ministers of the Konoe government met to discuss Norihiro Yasue's Fugu Plan, how to deal with the Jewish question. This included the Army Minister Seishiro Itagaki, who declared, "We are a nation that respects the coexistence of all. Thus, we do not differentiate between religions." The Japanese government has decided not to discriminate against the Jewish people, but rather tolerate and profit from them.
I have been to China more than 30 times and have developed a very friendly and warm relationship with everyone that I have met in China. I wrote many books in Japanese on Judaism, and these books have been translated into Korean and into Chinese, some becoming even bestsellers in Chinese. 20,000 refugees from the Nazis, from the Holocaust period, found refuge in Shanghai. And there were others in the Philippines and others in Manchuria and others in Japan. But 20,000 lives were saved in the city of Shanghai. They came from Poland, they came from Austria, they came from Germany. And we should pay respect to the warm welcome that they received without passports and visas, and their survival rate, even though it was wartime, their survival rate was 99%. We do not teach that in Manchuria and Harbin there was a fascinating Jewish community of 10,000 Jews, magnificent newspapers, synagogues, rabbis, Zionist centers, even the family of Ehud Olmert. His parents spoke Chinese when they didn't want their children to understand. When he visited China, he went to the cemetery, Jewish cemetery in Harbin, to visit his grandparents. 10,000 Jews living successfully and wonderfully where in northern China. The Rabbinites, Jewish merchant adventurers in the 600s, 700s, 800s, over 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, pioneered and monopolized the Silk Road, traveling through Europe, the Middle East, into China, and brought so much knowledge of China to the outside world. There are 2 synagogues now in China, or former synagogues, that became museums. But I think it's so important for us to realize what a great heritage we share with China and what China shares with us.
South America and the US and all those countries, and we couldn't get a visa for any place. The last place in the world where we could go was Shanghai. Why? Because they did not require a visa or anything. And Shanghai was an open city at that time that you could go to without, you just landed. Nobody would question you.
Traveling through the Tang Tunnel, we are now standing in front of the former site of the Ukhel Moshe Synagogue on Changyang Road in Hongkou district in Shanghai. The synagogue is a witness to much hardship and suffering in the past century. Today, we take a journey back to the 1930s, into the flames of war. At the beginning of 1933, Adolf Hitler began his anti-Semitic campaign campaign as soon as he gained power in Germany. November 9th, 1938, saw Kristallnacht, when numerous window panes were broken. On that day, synagogues were burned down, Jewish cemeteries and stores destroyed and ransacked. Countless Jews were killed or injured throughout Germany, and over 20,000 sent to concentration camps. Jews in Europe fled the cruel rule of the Nazis. Unfortunately, immigration policies were very restrictive in most countries because of the global economic crisis and the growing threat of the war. Even the countries with the largest Jewish communities had imposed harsh entry regulations on the Jewish refugees. Ironically, though all participants at the Evian Conference for the Jewish Refugees expressed their sympathies, no country ever provided a quota of refugees they would accept. That diminished survival opportunities for the Jews. Shanghai was then the only metropolis in the world to enter visa-free. Although locals there were having a tough time, they showed great generosity to accept the Jews. The Jewish refugees also got support from their Sephardic and Ashkenazi cousins, already settled down there since the mid to late 19th century. According to statistics, more than 30,000 European Jews escaped from Europe and arrived in Shanghai by sea between 1933 and 1945. Apart from the thousands of Jews who had departed Shanghai or other lands, some 25,000 stayed after the outbreak of the Pacific War in December 1941. Moshe Synagogue was a religious and cultural center for the Jews. Today, it has been fully restored and become the Shanghai Jewish Refugees Museum after careful renovation. We sincerely hope that this building, which has experienced such an unforgettable Jewish episode, could reflect a harmonious relationship and mutual help between the Chinese and Jewish peoples in times of difficulties, and help you appreciate and remember that chapter of history.
I was told by one of the men who's here now that the Germans had actually established a gas chamber in Shanghai. I didn't know that. And the Japanese wanted the Japanese to send them clients. And the Japanese said no. The Japanese said no.
We were supposed to get a pass, but we left sometimes without a pass and stayed out for 2-3 nights, and we worked in a restaurant or in a nightclub, and we slept there on the benches or whatever you had. And if the Japanese, if they caught us, we were beaten up, you know. At one time, they got my brother, and he got really terribly beaten up.
We moved into an area which was restricted. By that I mean you could not leave the area. You were restricted in your activities. The rations or the food the Japanese provided was subhuman. And the flour that they supplied for the bakeries was rat infested. The rationing was 1 ounce of butter a week. It was a 100% dramatic change in the ghetto.
Accommodation was a room from here to here. The stove is this. It was our room, and that was kitchen. There was everything. The outside was there was a faucet outside where you could wash yourself. Sometime in winter the water was frozen and you couldn't open it. We had a little Chinese stove, they call it a Chinese stove, like a clay pot. And you started out with newspaper and then wood, and you buy little coals, those pressed coals, and you fan it. It's very hard to get it. Once it gets going, then you take it into the room and you cook on it. And that serves as a stove, a heater, and everything. There are times, if you don't keep the windows open once in a while, you can just pass out from the gases, which I did one time. But then you get up again after a while, you know, you can just fresh air. But that was, and we had bunk beds in that little room. So my parents and I slept on the top bed, my parents slept in the lower bed, and it was all one little room.